Eleanor slowly opened her eyes, waking up with the first rays of sun that entered through the bedroom window. Beside her, James was still sleeping deeply. She watched for a few moments the face of her husband, marked by time and years of immobility. At 55 years old, Eleanor felt the weight of the 3 decades that had passed since the accident that changed their lives forever. She got up carefully so as not to wake him and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. While the water boiled, Eleanor looked out the window at the well-tended garden of the simple house where they lived. The colourful flowers she had planted the previous year were blooming, bringing some joy to the everyday scene. Her thoughts wandered to the past, recalling the fateful day she received the call from the hospital. James, her husband of just 25 years at the time, had suffered a severe fall at the construction site where he worked as a supervisor. Eleanor vividly remembered the anguish she felt running through the white, sterile corridors until finding her husband lying on the stretcher, motionless. The diagnosis was devastating, a spinal injury that would leave him paralyzed from the waist down. Eleanor, who was an elementary school teacher, did not hesitate to temporarily leave her job to dedicate herself fully to her husband's care. She firmly believed that, with love and dedication, James would be able to recover. But the years went by and recovery never came. James seemed to have resigned himself to his new condition, always thanking Eleanor for her tireless care, but avoiding talking about the accident or expressing his deeper feelings. He appeared to live in constant apathy with life and everything around him. Even though he was able to do many things, he seemed trapped by something greater. Eleanor, on the other hand, learned to live a life of sacrifices. She went back to working part-time to supplement their income, but much of her time and energy were dedicated to taking care of him. While preparing the toast and coffee, she reflected on how her life had transformed. Dreams of traveling, children, and a promising career as an educator had been replaced by a routine of caregiving, medical appointments, and constant adjustments. She loved James deeply, but couldn't deny the fatigue she felt after so many years of exclusive dedication. With breakfast ready, she returned to the bedroom to wake her husband and assist him with his morning routine. It was a ritual she knew by heart, helping him sit up in bed, transferring him to the wheelchair, assisting with personal hygiene and getting dressed. Everything was done with care and patience, but Eleanor couldn't help but notice how her own back ached more and more with the daily effort. "Good morning, my love," she said softly, touching James's face. He slowly opened his eyes, a tired smile forming on his lips. "Good morning, Ellie. You're an angel, you know," he replied, his voice hoarse with sleep. Eleanor smiled back, but felt a pang of sadness. Sometimes she wondered if he really saw her as a woman, a wife, or just as his caregiver. After breakfast, Eleanor helped James settle in the living room, turning on the television to his favourite programme before getting ready to go to work. She taught at the local primary school 3 mornings a week, a commitment that kept her connected to her passion for teaching and gave her a break from her domestic routine. Upon returning home, she found James exactly where she had left him, watching television. She prepared lunch for both of them, chatting about her day at school and the local news. James listened attentively, occasionally asking questions, but Eleanor noticed how his eyes seemed distant, as if his mind was somewhere else. After lunch and a few more hours of taking care of the house and James, Eleanor decided to organise some old documents in the attic. It was a task she had been putting off for weeks, but she felt she needed something to occupy her restless mind. Lately, she had been feeling increasingly frustrated with a routine that seemed endless. James spent entire days in front of the television, showing no interest in anything other than the programs he watched. He rarely talked about his feelings, or expressed a desire to do something different. Eleanor tried not to get upset, but it was hard not to feel invisible, as if her role in his life was reduced to being his caregiver, not his wife. In the dusty attic, Eleanor opened old boxes, finding photos of happier times, saved birthday cards and various documents. It was then that she came across a box she didn't remember seeing before. Intrigued, she opened it carefully. Inside, there were a series of papers related to James's accident. Eleanor leafed through the documents distractedly until something caught her attention. It was a technical report dated the day before the accident. She read it closely, her heart racing with each word. The document clearly stated that the scaffold from which James fell had been inspected and was in perfect condition. Confused, Eleanor continued to rummage through the papers. That's when she found a handwritten note, apparently written by one of James's co-workers. In it, the co-worker mentioned that James seemed nervous and distracted on the morning of the accident. Eleanor's mind began to spin. Why had she never seen these documents before? Why had James never mentioned this inspection of the scaffold? And what could have made him so nervous that fateful morning? With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Eleanor descended the stairs from the attic. She found James in the living room, as always, watching television. For a moment she just observed him, seeing not only the man she had cared for over 30 years, but also the vibrant young man he once was. Lately, she had been wondering if that apathy was merely a resignation to his condition, or if there was something else, something he wasn't sharing with her. "James," she called softly, her voice barely disguising the emotion. "We need to talk." James looked at her, his expression shifting from surprise to apprehension upon seeing Eleanor's serious demeanour. "What is it, Ellie? You seem upset." Eleanor sat in front of him, the documents she had found in her hands. "I found this in the attic," she began, showing the papers. "Why did you never tell me the details of that day? This report says the scaffolding was in perfect condition the day before the accident, and this note, it mentions you seemed nervous that morning. James, what really happened?" James's face visibly paled. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words seemed stuck in his throat. For a moment, he just looked at the documents as if he were reliving the past. "Please, James," Eleanor insisted, her voice soft but firm. "I need to know the truth. After everything we've been through, I deserve to know. And I also want to understand why you seem so distant, so disconnected from everything. I've been trying to help, but you don't react to anything. I just want you to start living again, James." James closed his eyes as if he were gathering courage. When he opened them again, they were filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Ellie. I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice broken. Eleanor held his hand, encouraging him to continue. "Talk to me, James. What happened that day?" He took a deep breath, as if he were preparing to carry a burden he had borne alone for 30 years. I was in trouble, Ellie. Trouble I didn't know how to resolve. I had debts. Gambling debts. I was desperate." Eleanor felt a lump form in her throat, but she remained silent, allowing him to continue. "I thought that if I had an accident, a small accident, just enough to keep me away from work for a while, I could get the compensation and pay off my debts. I never wanted it to be so serious, Ellie. I just wanted to solve my problems once and for all." Eleanor felt as if the ground had disappeared from under her feet. James's words echoed in her mind, but she couldn't fully process them. You planned this?" she asked, her voice trembling. James lowered his gaze, shame evident in every line of his face. "I didn't plan to hurt myself like this. I just wanted a small fall, something that would justify a leave. But something went wrong. The fall was worse than I expected. And when I woke up in the hospital and realized I couldn't feel my legs, Ellie, I was terrified. I knew I had destroyed everything." Eleanor sat in silence, trying to absorb what she had just heard. 30 years of her life, based on a lie. 30 years of care, sacrifices, and abandoned dreams, all because of a desperate decision made in a moment of despair and greed. "Why did you never tell me?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. James looked at her, his tears now unabated. "At first, I was in shock. And then I saw how you cared for me with so much love and dedication. I was afraid, Ellie. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of facing the consequences. And the more time passed, the harder it became to tell the truth." Eleanor stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden she tended with such care. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, disappointment. When she turned to James again, she saw not a villain, but a broken man. A man who made a terrible mistake and spent the last 30 years living with the consequences, carrying the weight of his guilt every day. "James, I'm not going to lie. It hurts. It hurts a lot. But I also see how much you have suffered with this secret, and I want to help you get out of this apathy that consumes you. I don't want to see you trapped in this routine anymore, without reacting to anything. We need to find a way to move forward, together." James looked at her, his eyes still full of tears, but now with a glimmer of hope. "I don't deserve you, Ellie, but I promise I will try. I will try to be better, for you and for us." Eleanor slowly approached James, kneeling to be at eye level with him. "You didn't steal my life, James. I chose to stay. I chose to take care of you. And even now, knowing the truth, I cannot deny the love I feel for you." She took his hands in hers, feeling the tremor that ran through them. "But things need to change. We cannot continue living in the past, trapped by this lie. Let's seek help, James. Let's find a way for you to reconnect with life, with me, with yourself." In the days and weeks that followed, Eleanor and James embarked on a painful but necessary journey of healing and rediscovery. They sought counseling, both individually and as a couple. James finally faced the demons of his past, including his gambling addiction, while Eleanor learned to process her feelings of anger and disappointment. Eleanor also made an important decision: she would go back to school. With James's support, she enrolled in a graduate program in education, something she had always dreamed of doing but had postponed for so long. As Eleanor delved into her studies, she felt a new energy flowing through her. The nights spent poring over books and academic articles were tiring but incredibly rewarding. She rediscovered her passion for teaching and began dreaming of new possibilities for her career. James, on the other hand, found a new way to contribute. He started participating in online support groups for people with disabilities, sharing his experiences and offering words of encouragement. For the first time in years, he felt he had a purpose beyond being just the recipient of Eleanor's care. The dynamics of their relationship changed. It was no longer just about caregiver and patient, but about partnership and mutual support. They learned to communicate more openly and honestly, sharing not only the joys, but also the frustrations and fears. 1 year after the revelation, Eleanor completed her postgraduate studies with distinction. On her graduation day, James was there, his eyes shining with pride. When Eleanor went up on stage to receive her diploma, she looked at the audience and saw not only her husband, but also her co-workers and some of her students. In that moment, Eleanor felt a wave of emotion overwhelm her. She realized that despite everything, the last 30 years had not been a waste. They had been a journey, difficult, yes, but also full of love, learning, and growth. As she left the stage, diploma in hand, Eleanor knew she was beginning a new chapter in her life. A chapter where the past would not define her future, but would serve as a powerful lesson in forgiveness, resilience, and the human capacity to start anew. She approached James, who was waiting for her with a bouquet of flowers. "I'm so proud of you, Ellie," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Eleanor leaned in and kissed him softly. "Thank you, James, for being here, for everything." As they left the auditorium, Eleanor reflected on the journey that had brought them there. She understood that life rarely follows the path we plan, and that the people we love can deeply disappoint us. But she also learned that true love can survive even the hardest trials, and that it is never too late to rebuild and seek happiness. With a smile on her lips and a light heart, Eleanor looked to the future with hope. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but now she felt ready to face them, not alone, but alongside James, as true life partners. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.